It's Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. And if you run a restaurant, you probably don't have time for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing, new locations opening. You need more customers and keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to squareup.com/CA/EN/campaign/big INRST to see why Square is big in restaurants. And RinkWide Vancouver is big in postgame, and the co-host Irfaan Gaffar joins us here. He and Jeff Patterson will have you covered moments after the Canucks and Flames finish tonight in the season and home opener at Rogers
Moments
Arena.
after the Canucks go to 1-0 on the season.
That's right.
Irf?
How you doing, Irf?
I'm great. How are we doing? Official start to the hockey season for the Canucks, but last night we got things started in a fun way, didn't we, boys?
Yeah, no,
good vibes.
Caught a couple periods there of the Utah game, and I'll say this: it's got to feel great for Gary Bettman and the league to have no longer have the blight of the Coyotes and have that sort of optimism and enthusiasm,
or the Panthers for that matter, because it was great vibes in Sunrise too.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely, a good opening night for the and a good opening afternoon down the I-5.
Yeah.
In Seattle. All right, Irf, we talk Canucks here, so let's have right at it with the poll question today. Do you have Stanley Cup expectations for the Canucks?
I think Stanley Cup's a bit of a reach. To be completely honest, I think when you look at most analysts and pundits that predict it, it's the Oilers probably coming out of the Western Conference. I think the Canucks, the makeup of this Canucks team is better than it was last season, but they ended their season without their goalie. They are starting their season without their number one goalie. That is the issue for me. It's the health and the question of Thatcher Demko. I mean, Brock Besser obviously didn't play in Game 7. So I don't think that Stanley Cup aspirations should be there for the Vancouver. I mean, they're definitely going to be there. I think we need to temper expectations. I think if we can get to the conference final, I think that's definitely a win. But a lot of people are predicting the Edmonton Oilers, and the Oilers also got better as well.
You think guys like Quinn Hughes and JT Miller are happy with what this management group has given them for this season? Do you think they'll see this as management giving them the tools to succeed?
I think Elias Pettersson is very happy what management has given him this season.
Given him, yes.
For sure, right? I think when you look at JT Miller and Quinn Hughes, they're going to go out and they're going to do exactly what they do. I mean, JT Miller were over 100 points last year. Quinn Hughes, 92 as a defenseman. I mean, he's probably looking to reach 20 goals this season on a personal level for him. But team success is the biggest thing. And when you look at it, guys, this team is better, right? The additions of guys like Jake DeBrusk, of guys like Danton Heinen, Kiefer Sherwood. You look at the two big defensemen on the back end, and Derek Forbort and Vinny Desharnais, right? There's a little bit of added muscle. There's a little bit of toughness, a little more sandpaper to play against going into the playoffs. Dakota Joshua, obviously, it's going to be a little while till he comes back, but then he brings another element to this team. So staying healthy is the number one thing. And for me, and I think everyone has to agree, it's what is the health status of Thatcher Demko come playoff time, and that's going to be the biggest thing.
I like this lineup for the playoffs for sure. The question is, can they get enough points through the 82 games, not to make the playoffs? I think that's probably safe, but to be where they want to be in the top half of the division. I mean, having that beef on the blue line going into the playoffs, great, but can they last night in, night out for the 6 months in between?
Well, I think the biggest thing, if you're asking me, on a wish list for Rick Tocchet, is another top four defenseman at some point, right, during this season, whether they can, acquire that via trade and get creative, or we'll see where they are right around American Thanksgiving. I look at it where teams are at American Thanksgiving, where they're at right around the All-Star break, or I guess the Four Nations break, and the trade deadline. That's kind of, you separate yourself from being a real contender and a real pretender in the National Hockey League. So last year, they got off to this ridiculously good start. They were the best team in the National Hockey League for quite some time. They go out, they acquire a guy like Nikita Zadorov in December. If they do go off to a big start, if they do have the start that they did and do things that they did last season, who's to say that they're not going to go and acquire? Like, if you're Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, and this team is playing so well for the first few months of the season, you owe it to them to try and put you over the edge and get ahead of the other teams in your division.
Do you think management will approach it like cup or bust? Do you think they'll be all in? Because, as we discussed last year, Irf, they were kind of all in. They wanted to be all in, didn't really have the cap space to be all in, and stopped short of all in. Do you think everything's on the board in terms of trading top prospects and first round picks to try and get this team over the top?
I do, but I also think you have to be careful with it, right? I think that, your window is definitely open right now. You have your young players signed to long-term contracts and have them locked in for the next few years. You have a goalie that's there for the next couple of years. You got a young up-and-coming goalie that's also there as well. So you also have to be careful, right? Are you going to go and give up a first-rounder pick or a second-round pick or mortgage a prospect for a guy that's a rental that you think is going to put you over the edge? I mean, we saw what happened with, Elias Lindholm, and obviously things in the contract situation didn't work out, but Elias Lindholm ended up being their best player in the playoffs, one of their best players in the playoffs. So I think for the Canucks and their management looking at it now is you go, and if you're able to acquire a guy, hopefully he's got a little bit of term where you can help grow with this team, right? Unless he's some guy that that you're going to get at the deadline that maybe he's not been chasing a cup. Maybe he's a guy that has some experience, but he's on a team that isn't really going to do anything, or a team that's not really going to make the playoffs. You can go ahead and make a move like that. But as far as mortgaging their future to just try and get over the edge, I just think this management team's a lot smarter than that.
Are we their top 7 scorers were perfectly healthy last year. Their team shooting percentage was second best in the league. Their team save percentage was extraordinary as well. Can they count on those things again, or are they likely to get bit by one of those areas this season?
I mean, injuries do happen. It's sports, but they didn't really. The only injury that really happened that cost the Canucks last season was their goalie, right? To be completely honest, I mean, everyone else was there. Everyone put up career numbers. Everyone was, playing their asses off for the entire season. And you look at it from a standpoint of, can you see a guy like JT Miller going to get over 100 points again? No, but 90 is probably a realistic expectation. Elias Pettersson is probably, with the big contract and all the expectation from him, you expect points from him. You expect 90 points from him. Jake DeBrusk better score 20 goals. You're paying him like a 20, 25 goal scorer, so he better be one of those guys. Danton Heinen is going to play up and down the lineup because he's so versatile. Again, when they made that, when they went and acquired him, I thought that was one of the more underrated moves that they did go. My biggest thing is the defense and goalie, right? I think that those are the things that you have to keep looking back on and that they're going to have to improve on. But you mentioned the top guys being healthy and having career years. I think that we have to temper expectations a little bit because injuries do happen. I mean, not that I'm saying I want anybody to get hurt. You obviously want people to remain healthy and all of that, but they're already behind the 8 ball with their starting goaltender not playing tonight.
It's funny. There was some models that have the Vancouver Canucks at the top of the Pacific Division at the end of the season. But a lot of the surveys have come out from ESPN and Sportsnet, and I don't think I saw a single analyst on the two networks picking the Vancouver Canucks to win the Pacific Division. Trophy prognostications shut out by everybody, and that's for all the trophies,
including the Norris.
Yes, and as many pointed out, there aren't back-to-back Norris Trophy winners anymore, and that's fine. But I couldn't believe that nobody chose the Canucks to win the Pacific Division. That seems plausible, if not a guarantee. What do you think? Do the Canucks still have a case to have a chip on their shoulder of disrespect around the league? Can they use that as fuel?
When have the Canucks ever had respect around the National Hockey League, to be completely honest? I mean, you go and look at it. All these analysts and all these pundits that go and make these predictions, they tweet about loving Vancouver whenever they come here, but they really don't care about watching the team otherwise.
2011, 2012, they were always chosen to win the division. I think back then.
That was it. Yeah. Their teams were really bad after that, but this is a good hockey team. They won the Pacific Division last year. People were scared to play the Vancouver Canucks last season because they were such a good hockey team. I think you got better in this offseason. You have a coaching staff that's been there before. You've got a management team that knows what it takes to win. I think the Canucks can win the Pacific Division. I understand why everyone picking the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, you have the two of the 3 or 4 best players in the National Hockey League on your team. That usually helps with the case there. But I think the Canucks have a very good shot to win the Pacific Division. I think for them, you want to be playing your best hockey come March and April. And I think that that's the biggest thing for them when you're looking at it from a coaching staff perspective is, heading into the playoff last season, there was so much energy exerted into being that team that was so good and going out and putting all these historic numbers out and all of that maybe they tailed off a little bit just before the playoffs started. So I think when you look at it now, yes, you want to go and compete every single night as hard as you can and all of that, but you need to be hitting your stride in March and April come playoff time.
Where's the RESPECT?
Well, it's true. Do you not blame me?
No, you're quite right. You're quite right. Talk it.
Yep.
And the emphasis to create more rush chances and more shots on goal by more shot attempts and surrendering possession in the offensive zone. As we know, team defense was the underpinning of their success last year. How long do you think it will take for this group to get comfortable with being a little more aggressive, being a little bit more open in terms of the rush chances and shot attempts in the offensive zone while still maintaining that good team defense that was so key to their success last year?
Well, I think they know what their structure is, right? I think you know how you want to play the game. Now, you're adding an element to it as going to shoot the puck a lot more, which is the name of the game, right? You want to put the puck in the net of the opposing team. Now, you've got a lot of guys that are capable of doing that every single shift. I don't think you wanting to gain entry into the O-zone and just pass the puck around. Shoot it. There were times on that power play where Quinn Hughes would pass it to JT Miller, who would go cross ice to Brock Besser, who would go back to Quinn Hughes, and I think everyone would scream, just shoot the puck. Well, it didn't happen. And I think you're going to see a sense of urgency more to get the puck to the net. You've got guys like Jake DeBrusk who are going to go to the net. You've got JT Miller, who's a guy that can, wreak havoc in front as well, if and when he wants to. Brock's shot, obviously, in the preseason, you saw it's definitely there. Hit a couple posts in the last preseason game. He looks like, he's back and ready to go, also on a contract year. And Elias Pettersson, right? I think that's the big one. Can he get back to that Elias Pettersson where every time that he wound up to take a shot, you thought that it was going to hit the net or hit the back of the net? There were times last season where he was shooting and it was missing the net by 5 feet or wasn't even shooting at all. So you have these guys the ability to go and do that. Now it's just about executing that plan. And I think that Rick Tocchet did a pretty good job in the preseason of trying to get that and instill it in his players. But I think another thing that was interesting is I heard Patrick Alvin do an interview this morning on one of the local news stations, and he said that our system is so good that even guys that are in the American League, when they get called up, they know exactly the way to play. And I think that that's interesting because of how seamless it's going to be for guys that get called up. So a guy like Atu Ratu, guys like Archie Paynes, where they're not going to come up and play in the NHL and look lost because they already know that the system that Rick Tocchet has implemented.
It feels like they're going to use Abbotsford a little bit more, both in terms of players and in terms of cap, getting some cap fluidity there and cap space when they can. It's funny that it took them this long to do so, but in over 2 different management groups, but it appears this year they might use Abbotsford a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Eric Brandstrom's going to be in Abbotsford for a long time. I'll tell you that much. I think that they brought him here for a reason. He's a young up-and-coming defenseman. I know that they want him to work with the Sedin twins a lot. They want him to work with guys like Adam Foote if and when he does get called up, Sergei Gonchar. I mean, they definitely see something there. They see some potential. Now, whether that's a 7-8 defenseman, we're going to have to see what happens, or maybe he gets into the lineup, right? I think the experiment with Derek Forbort, they're going to keep a really close eye on that. I thought there were times where he struggled to keep the puck on his stick, for lack of better words, in the preseason, but we're going to just have to wait and see as how the regular season unfolds here.
All right, buddy. Predictions time. What do you think in terms of points, division finish, and playoffs? Where you got them?
I have them winning the Pacific Division. I think that they can do it again. I really do. I've got high hopes for them. I think that, if they can stay healthy, this team is better than it was last season. Ilya Mikheyev isn't an anchor on Elias Pettersson's wing, so you're going to get more points there, and generally you are going to get some more wins. Conference final, I think that should be the goal. I really do. I think that, the mind for the Vancouver Canucks and their staff is obviously a lot higher. The ultimate goal is competing for a Stanley Cup, but I think the conference finals is definitely should be an attainable goal for this group.
Well, you and Jeff will have it tonight. Every opening day, I always think of Jeff Patterson and how giddy he is, Blake. You know how much Jeff loves
I've already been
game
texting
day.
with him. He's
got
on
his
it.
game day. I feel him reverberating from North Van already. Jeff, RinkWide Vancouver, moments after the final horn tonight. Buddy, thank you for this. Have a fantastic season. We'll catch up here soon.
All right, gentlemen, be well.